we have going on here. This is April Showers of the April Showers Network. Woo, hoo, hoo. Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing this beautiful evening? So, hey, check this out. This is what's going on with Kamala Harris. Ooh, try different hairstyles. So, anyway, I'm going to just let the video do the talking. As y'all can see, moving the furniture around, cleaning, wiping. But here we go without further ado.
Campaign in modern history. Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. 107 days, traveling the country, fighting for our future. The shortest presidential campaign in modern history. It was intense, high stakes, and deeply personal for me and for so many of you. Since leaving office, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on those days. Talking to my team, my family, my friends, and pulling my thoughts together. In essence, writing a journal that is this book, 107 Days. With candor and reflection, I've written a behind-the-scenes account of that journey. I believe there's value in sharing what I saw, what I learned, and what I know it will take to move forward. In writing this book, one truth kept coming back to me. Sometimes, the fight takes a while. But I remain full of hope, and I remain clear-eyed. I will never stop fighting to make our country reflect the very best of its ideals, always on behalf of the people. So thank you for being in this fight with me. I am forever grateful, and I cannot wait for you to read this, and I'll see you out there. Take care.
Okay, everybody. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So, what we have here is Kamala Harris. You know, she's going to talk about those 107 days. When the Democratic Party was scrambling, they had no other choice but to put Kamala Harris in the fight. A lot of people were not too fond of Kamala Harris. You know, she wasn't black. You know, she sent a lot of black men of color, to jail. You know, the immigrations, we were looking at migrants come over here at a, oh gosh, woo. It was awful. Looking at all of those migrants just come over, and then we were hearing about all of the money they were getting, and woo. So anyway, Kamala Harris was very upset in this book. So we're going to look at the first thing she said. For the country, you know, she was on Good Morning America. And let's see if we have that footage. Because she's been all over, talking about her book. And so she did this interview, MSNBC, Rachel Maddox. And we're just going to look at some of the things she has been saying. Hello to anybody that's in the chat. Hey, Susan. Hey, the Butt Files.
About permanent teeth in 24 hours. They're not shortcuts.
Remember,
Engineered solutions based on science.
As Democrats look to the next election, it's the last one in the spotlight tonight, with Kamala Harris detailing and in some instances re-mitigating her 107-day presidential campaign last fall. We just didn't have enough time. The former vice president reveals then-President Biden first raised with her the possibility he might drop out nearly a week before he actually did, on July 15th, 2 days after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Harris says the mantra at the White House, "It's Joe and Jill's decision," writing, "Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness." Now, she herself is accepting some of that blame.
I realize that I have and had a certain responsibility that I should have followed through on, which is, and so when I talk about the recklessness, as much as anything, I'm talking about myself.
For her own running mate, Harris ultimately chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. But her first choice, she says, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who's openly gay. "He would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight white man," she writes. "But we were already asking a lot of America."
It wasn't about any prejudice on my part, but that we had such a short period.
Right, Hallie, we thank you. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app.
So,
Watch live on our
Kamala, woo, she is really talking. So, let's see another video on what she's talking about.
Saw her last night on television and promoting the book. And I love her. I voted for her. So a lot of her ideas I'm on board with. I'm on board with number 50 I'm going to vote for. Just for that.
Let's see if we can get some of this Rachel Maddox interview. So let's see if we can get some of that going. But anyway, Kamala Harris was very disappointed. You know, she really, hold on. She wanted to choose a different running mate. You know, she felt like they just threw her in the race and she was scrambling. You can't make this stuff up. See, everything's coming out. Everybody's being exposed. Okay, so let's look at this video with Michael Strahan.
Kamala Harris, who has a new book out called 107 Days. That's a nearly day-by-day account of her run for president and the 2024 campaign. Vice President Harris, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be with you.
Great to be with you. And we're just gonna dive right into it because
Okay.
everyone seems to have their own theory. But why do you feel or believe that you lost the 2024 presidential election?
Well, I talk about a lot of the factors that I think contributed to the outcome. But the reason I wrote the book is, Michael, it really was an unprecedented election. You think about it. A sitting vice president running for re-election 3.5 months before the election decides not to run. The sitting vice president then takes up the mantle, running against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years with 107 days to go. It's unprecedented. It was the closest presidential election in the 21st century. And as history writes about that election, I felt very strongly that I wanted to make sure my voice was present in how that election is discussed and covered. It's part of American history, and I wanted to make sure my voice would be a part of that.
Did you believe 107 days was enough? Did you wish you had more time? But do you think it was enough? And if not, do you think that any other Democrat could have pulled it off at 107 days?
It was not enough. I can't predict the outcome. We have lots of stars in our party. I'm sure that there are many people who would have done a great job. I can't predict what the outcome would have been.
Well, how do you? There were some Democrats who said that you don't take enough responsibility for the loss. How do you respond to that?
As I say many times in different ways in the book, the buck stopped with me, and I'm clear about that. And there were so many factors. You know, one of the aspects of those 107 days that I think is important to remember as we go forward is that we have an individual in the White House, the President Trump, who in running for re-election made a lot of promises to the American people that he did not keep. I talk extensively about the fact he said that his main reason for running, and on day one, he was going to bring down prices. And I do believe a lot of people voted for him with that priority in mind. And look at where we are today. Inflation is up. The cost of food is up. Unemployment is up. He did not keep that promise to the American people. And we also need to remember those 107 days around some other stuff that he said. Mass deportations. That he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, that he would silence critics. And he has done that consistently. Mass deportations, you know, somebody told me recently a story about a fellow they were talking with who was a big supporter of President Trump when he was running. He's a Floridian, he's Cuban descent, and he shared the story of how his life partner, his wife, is now in deportation proceedings to be sent to Sudan. And when asked, what happened? Why did you have so much support for him? He said, well, I believe what he said, that he was going to only go after criminals. So part of the reason that I have written this book is for us to remember that there is somebody in the White House right now that made a whole lot of promises that were either about what would aggrandize and help him met out his vengeance, or about lies he told to the American people that he obviously never intended to keep.
And let's talk about somebody who was in the White House with you,
Yeah.
President Biden. President Biden, I'm saying he believed that he insists that he would have won the race. So when you hear him say that, how does that make you feel?
I think that the reality of it is that, for me, I'm not going to predict what didn't happen. The reality is, and listen, I talk about how difficult January 6th was for me, of 2024, not to mention 2020.
Yeah.
When I fulfilled my constitutional duty and responsibility as Vice President of the United States and President of the United States Senate to stand there as the former Democratic nominee for president and certify the election. Because I believe very strongly that in spite of all the other nonsense that might be coming out of my former opponent, I was not about to degrade the role of Vice President of the United States around acknowledging a free and fair election and the peaceful transfer of power, which is part of the hallmark of who we have presented ourselves to be as the United States of America.
Well, you said in the book that that's the hardest thing that you had to do.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, Michael.
But there are so many people out there who felt that President Biden shouldn't have run for re-election. And you wrote in a book that it was, quote, Joe and Jill's decision, that other Democrats decided it was Joe and Jill's decision. Well, do you regret not voicing your opinion in that moment?
Yes, and I actually have reflected on that, and I've written about that. I realized
that mattered if you did.
I don't know, but I can only take responsibility for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And on reflection, and I talk about it in the context of asking a question of myself: was that grace to not bring it up to him, or was it reckless? And on my part, I do reflect on that and feel that there was a recklessness about not raising it with him. I talk about what was going through my head, right? And what was going through my head to not bring it up was that it would come off as being very self-serving and therefore maybe lack the credibility that it deserved. But I do think about it. And I also say, though, and I speak extensively about this, my concern about him running for re-election was completely separate from my admiration and knowledge about his capacity to serve as President of the United States, which was consistent and never wavered.
But when we sit here, as we sit here today, do you think he would have been up for running the country for 4 more years?
Here's the distinction that I make. And having had the experience myself, it is one thing to have the capacity to govern. It is another thing to go through an election for President of the United States. So you are an athlete, you may appreciate this kind of metaphor. Running for President of the United States is like being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace with people throwing tomatoes at you every step you take. It is not for the lighthearted. It takes an incredible amount of endurance and stamina. And can you imagine doing it while you are also carrying literally the weight of the world as being President of the United States? So the distinction I make about capacity to be president and what that election would require in that campaign, especially running against Donald Trump.
Yeah, and running against Trump, you had the big debate that we all watched. And you said leading up to that debate, you got a call the day of. And the call from President Biden left you angry and disappointed. What did he say to you?
Whoa.
Homeowners, I want to buy your house
Come on.
right now, as is. No matter
I want to know what did Biden say to her.
President Biden left you angry and disappointed. What did he say to you?
So he called me, and again, listen, this book, I am being candid in this book about behind the scenes what happened, and in a way that I hope is helpful for people to understand what that all was. And part of that call that he made to me the afternoon before the debate was to wish me luck, but also to talk about something that was more in his interest than it was in mine, especially in the context of that time. But let me also say this, that a large part of why this book has been written and why I wrote it is I really want to remind the American people, and there are so many stories I tell about, in those 107 days, being with tens of thousands of people, Michael, people who seemingly have nothing in common, who had enthusiasm and optimism and hope about the future of our country. And I talk about it now and always. We're living in very dark times. These are troubling times. And I hope and I pray that when people read this book, they will remember the light that they had
that cannot be diminished by the outcome of one election or the existence of one individual. That light exists in all of us. And we have to see it in each other and let that propel us through these dark days.
And we see your passion for politics. We see your passion for the country. You ruled out to run for governor, California.
Correct. That's correct.
Are you ruling out a run, or are you ruling out a run for president in 2028?
I'm not focused on that right now. I'm really not. I'm really excited about my book tour.
Well,
I'm excited about being out and listening to folks. I think it's important to listen. Mm-hmm. And elevate people's voices. There's such when I'm out and about, I can't tell you the number of people that come up to me crying.
Well, do you think that writing this book could have burned some bridges, though, that could help you politically?
No, and that's not my intention, and I hope not. If you're talking about the chatter about who I talk about, we have nothing but stars as far as I'm concerned in the party. And I talk glowingly about who they are and what they're contributing. And frankly, I think that part of the problem that we have right now in terms of the punditry is to suggest that we are waiting for a Messiah and the Savior and the saving message, instead of seeing that we actually have a lot of stars who are doing very good work, pushing back, but also talking about what we stand for. And I think it's time that we also recognize that is counterproductive, to keep saying who is the one instead of seeing in front of us how rich we are in terms of talent. And let's support that.
All right, let's support that. We'll see if people will be supporting you if you announce you're going to run in 2028.
Oh my goodness! I just buy the book. Just buy the book.
Former Vice President.
Okay. All right, Cammy. Hey, I sure would like to know what Joe Biden told her, but as we she wants us to buy the book.
Joe Biden told her, but as we
she wants us to buy the book.
Joe Biden told her, but
Hold on.
She wants us to buy the book.
You can't make this stuff up. Can you please hit the like button if you come in? So, Kamala Harris wrote a book, 107 Days. And we're going to have to read the book because I sure would like to know what Joe Biden told her. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. She said it was painful. She said it was very painful. Very painful. Will any of you be buying her book? Let's see. Will anybody be buying her book? Put a yes or no in the comments. So let's see what NBC News has to say. Okay. Let's see what NBC News has to say. They're going to talk about the 9 takeaways.
We start right now with Kamala Harris delivering her sharpest criticism yet of former President Joe Biden's decision to run for re-election. Now, in an excerpt from her upcoming memoir, Harris says it was reckless to leave that decision up to Biden. She writes, the stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego and individual's ambition.
Now, by the time Biden dropped out of the race and Harris became the nominee, there were just 107 days left until the election. NBC News national affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is live in Washington, D.C. for us. Kelly, always good to see you. So Harris also accuses former Biden staffers of undermining her. What else is she revealing in this memoir that stands out to you?
Well, part of what we are experiencing is a glimpse into Harris's own reflections. This upcoming book, we've only seen excerpts so far, will tell the story of her 100-day sprint to Election Day, but it also goes deeper into the relationship. There seems to be a distinction between her relationship with Joe Biden as a fellow candidate, as the president she served, and their relationship, and the small group of senior advisors who had been around President Biden throughout his whole half century in public life. And she writes about feeling undermined, and that her argument is, had she been allowed to have successes as vice president and to have been supported in ways where she felt she was not, that would have reflected well on President Biden for his choice in making her vice president and for the generational shift that really the whole country anticipated would happen at some point. So it's really the first time we are seeing this. She was unfailingly loyal to President Biden while she served him as vice president, made the point again and again. This is a chance for her to kind of peel back the curtain a bit. Not suggesting she's disloyal, but she is airing some of her concerns in a way we haven't really heard before.
I mean, and she sounded very gracious in all of this, but, you know, there were entire books written about the fact that people believe there was a conspiracy to cover up Biden's mental decline, something that she denies. What does she say?
She rejects that, and she talks about the fact in the book that she believes that President Biden was certainly aging, and everyone saw that in real time. And she writes about the differences as she sees them, where she says that on his best day, or on his worst day rather, President Biden was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best, meaning his best day. But at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles. So she's making the argument for aging on the world stage in a very visible job, different than those who allege that there was a diagnosable decline, a dementia or something like that that's been asserted by some critics, but there's no actual evidence of that. And of course, she's talking about the reality that many Americans could see for themselves when President Biden, while in office, had verbal stumbles, did appear slower. She is saying there was no organized effort to conceal that. She goes further to say, had she seen that, she would have raised it, saying that she's more loyal to her country than to President Biden, as close as they were.
Really interesting. Kelly O'Donnell there from D.C. Kelly, thanks.
Okay. So the 9 takeaways from the book that NBC come up with. Resentment towards Biden. Silent anguish.
Jimmy
Let's
Kimmel
see.
finally breaking his silence.
The government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like
Dishing
is
on
anti-American.
Democrats.
Tonight, ABC saying Kimmel's return is now his highest rated episode in more than a decade.
Oh, we'll talk about him later. What else did she say? So, let's get back before I played that episode. Sorry, y'all. So, they got 9 takeaways. I guess I'm going to have to get StreamYard so I can show all of these screens and don't have to hold this phone. So, the 9 takeaways from the book are... She had resentment toward Biden, silent anguish, dishing on Democrats, the wrong vice president because she wanted to choose another one. Dismissing Trump's jabs and regrets that she had a few jabs, I guess. So, I don't know. I think I want to get this book and read it. Yeah. Yeah, this would be very interesting. Very interesting. You know, when I think about it, 107 days. Ooh, that was, you know, that wasn't a lot of time. And so, one thing I can say is she really doesn't talk about Joe Biden too much in these interviews, except for she just says that he was aging. Now, let's see what she says here. Come on. They're not getting. It's taking too long. So anyway, let's see what the Bidens think about Kamala Harris's book. What the Bidens think about her book. Kamala Harris, different vice president. So let's see. Let's see what are the Bidens saying about Kamala Harris's book.
All right, you won that debate. Hold on, but we haven't won anything yet, right? So we got to take this energy, we got to take this momentum, and she showed everyone, especially Donald Trump, what a real leader is. And now we're going to take this momentum for the next 55 days so I can call my wife the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris!
There's Doug Emhoff, and we are talking about Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris' new book is coming out, and, I don't want to see it push any books off of the, well, I don't care which books it pushes off, but I don't want it to push off Separation of Church and Hate, which is John Fugelsang's book.
Which is the same book as well. Mine is all backstabbing to get people who gave me jobs, so I understand.
I know some of those people too, John, so it'll be discomforting to read that. But former Vice President Kamala Harris is giving more insight now into what she had to deal with on the campaign trail in 2024. And this time, she's revealing what happened after her debate, and at her debate with Donald Trump. Harris has already divulged in excerpts given to The Atlantic that she didn't feel supported by the Biden administration after Biden left the race. And now we're learning that on debate night, Biden's pep talk was anything but that. According to the Times, minutes before Harris went on the stage, she received a call from President Biden. He relayed that his brother told him that she was bad-mouthing him and that several power brokers in Philadelphia were threatening not to support her because of it. Biden went on to insist that his own disastrous debate performance had not hurt him with voters and that he had beaten Trump, which he'd done in 2016. Harris went on to say, I just couldn't understand why he would call me right now and make it all about himself, distracting me with worry about hostile power brokers in the biggest city of the most important swing state. It didn't help that the day after the debate was the day Biden donned a Trump hat while visiting the Shanksville Volunteer Fire Department in Pennsylvania. Take a look.
Oh, goodness. I remember when Biden did that.
That was kind of awkward. The only one who actually said nice things to her? Well, you guessed it, Donald Trump. In private, of course, after Trump's second assassination attempt, Kamala Harris spoke to Trump on the phone. You've done a great job, said Trump. You really have. My only problem is it makes it very hard for me to be angry at you. It's like, what am I going to do? How do I say bad things about you now? Harris then said, well, then don't, Trump. I'm going to tone it down. I will. You're going to see. Harris knew he wasn't being genuine. He even said Ivanka was, quote, a big fan. Harris said he's a con man. He's really good at it. I'd readied myself for a phone conversation with Mr. Hyde, but Dr. Jekyll had picked up the call. And even in a second phone call after Trump had won, he put on the act after she asked him to work together to bring the country together. I'm going to be so nice and respectful, said Donald Trump. You are a tough, smart customer, and I say that with great respect. And you also have a beautiful name. I got used to that name. It's Kamala. So that's an excerpt from the book. He said her name correctly. She said in that moment she knew her plea was in fact a lost cause. She ends the book wondering if there's even a possibility to bring change at this point. Finally, she said, I'll be with the people in towns, communities where I can listen to their ideas on how we rebuild trust, empathy, and a government worthy of the ideals of this country. We planned for everything, it seemed, except the actual result, which is, something was that people say when they lose elections all the time. I think that when you read these postmortems on election, people are saying, who cares about this book? Who wants to read a book? I think it's fascinating. It was a truncated candidacy. It was the most unusual of our lifetime, and knowing what happened and what was behind the scenes of a president who was still in office and didn't really want to leave, and his vice president running, I don't think Al Gore would glow about the support he got from Bill Clinton's people. George Bush certainly didn't get support from Ronald Reagan's people. So I think this is a familiar theme, but in such an unusual election. What do you make of this tour, Was?
I mean, she's kind of a man or a woman without a country, in the sense that there's never really been a Kamala Harris constituency. When she ran in the primary in 2020, she was polling in the low single digits. Like, nobody cared for this lady. She got picked, and let's face it, Joe Biden came on and said, I wanted to pick a black woman, so she got picked for that. It wasn't because she was bringing some extraordinary constituency or fan group or affinity group or any of that. Joe Biden treated her as checking a box. All his people did in places like Axios and Politico throughout his presidency was just dog her. Just be like, she's useless. We can't put her on anything. She's an incompetent. You can't be serious. Why would we get out the way for this? All of that stuff. And then, she kind of gets thrust into this moment with basically no time left on the clock. And I think she ran a bad campaign, but I think all things considered, I don't think she was like completely and wholly a disaster. I just think once those consultants and the people who run the DNC get their hooks into you, they kind of got bad instincts, and her campaign followed some bad advice. And now it's like, how do you even put lipstick on that pig? I guess you can always try, but I think the ultimate sign that she's like kind of nowhere with any of this is that, first it was floated, yeah, I'm gearing up for 2028. I'm coming back for you guys. I'm coming back to take the country. Then it was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna take Gavin Newsom's seat because I'm a California person and blah blah blah. All of that is zip, gone, done. She's done.
Well, I don't know that I agree with everything you said, Waz, other than, the dynamics that were in play. I actually, and people can disagree all the time, but I didn't think she ran a bad campaign, considering what she had to work with, considering what she had going on in the White House.
I think running around with Dick Cheney's kid is a bad idea. That kind of stuff.
It is weird. But it's a good play coming out of January 6th and coming out of trying to.
Doing it one day is
right. It is. So I mean,
one appearance.
I don't know. Other than I covered her for about.
She lost the election. She had 107 days. Kamala Harris had 107 days. They threw her in the race. They are saying that the book isn't doing that well. Yeah. And she talked to Rachel Maddow. You can listen to that full interview.
News interviews since leaving office, her first.
And 107 days, I would say, was really not fair for her. And then again, like I said, they tried to make her black. She didn't have a good track record with black. And I think they were banking on that. I really never thought that they really wanted Kamala to actually run this United States of America, considering if Hillary Clinton never won, I could not, even in my wildest dreams, imagine Kamala Harris becoming president, a black woman, for a white woman, Hillary Clinton. That's just my theory. That's just my opinion. And so I guess tomorrow's show, if some people want to, I'm going to play the Rachel Maddow interview and see what she says. But I guess we got to get the book to get all the really juicy details. Let's see. How is her book tour doing? Does anybody know? Let's see. Let me tell 107-day book tour going. Boy, she's going all over with her book. She done been to London. She done been all over promoting this book. Wow. Whoa. Whoa. Here's some interesting news. So, Kamala Harris' first book tour appearance disrupted by Gaza protesters. Wow. Whoa. Mm. But a lot of people, um, they'll come up with all kind of theories now. But I guess his name is Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg, you know, uh, that was her first choice. Whoa. Hmm. Mm. Let's look at this. Boy, this gets
These are the 10 stocks I'm investing in 2025.
this gets even better.
Let's start out with some
Pick
US
this
bets.
step up, as they say.
Another bombshell revelation just dropping from former Vice President Kamala Harris's upcoming book about the 2024 election called 107 Days. An excerpt published by The Atlantic reveals Harris's first choice to run as her VP was actually former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, but she decided the risk was too great. She writes, Buttigieg, who is gay, quote, would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight white man. But we were already asking a lot of America to accept a black woman married to a Jewish man. Boris?
Harris also writes that she wanted to say, screw it, let's just do it, but that it was too big of a risk and there was too much at stake. Let's discuss with Jamal Simmons, a CNN political commentator and the former communications director for the former VP. Jamal, great to you as always. Why do you think she thought Buttigieg was an ideal partner?
As she wrote in the book, and as so many of us who've watched Secretary Buttigieg over the years, he's just a great communicator. He's from the center of the country, so he's got a very easy way to relate with people in terms of how he communicates on the issues. I think that really matters, and I think she was comfortable with him. I don't know if they always started out that way. Remember, they took kind of a trip together in that first year when they were in the White House to kind of allay concerns that maybe they might be running into each other at some point in the future. But when I was there, what I saw was the Transportation Department under Secretary Buttigieg was very supportive of the Vice President. Whenever she would do trips that had to do with transportation issues, he would often fly with us on Air Force Two. So I think they developed a pretty good relationship over time.
Do you think having Buttigieg as her VP pick would have made a difference on the outcome of the election?
She may be right about the concerns about having so much change at one time. I mean, in America, hashtag America, right? We are living through seeing so many Americans feeling left out of the political process when it comes to those of us who are on the left, who are really interested in social change and making sure everybody has a chance to participate in the American experiment. But the question is, how much change can you have at one time? And so I think she saw, obviously, her family was a very blended family. Both, she and Doug, obviously, she mentioned who's Jewish American. They've got family members and different kinds of collaborations between, mixes of races. Her mom's Indian American, her dad was Jamaican.
They'll find any excuse. They'll find any excuse. But what do you guys think? But anyway, if anybody gets this book, and like I said, and they read it, you're more than welcome to come on the show and give us the juicy details. I'm not going to spend any money on them throwing in a woman and 107 days, making her a black woman. It was just, you know, it was crazy. It was really crazy. You know, the Democrats, they were scrambling. And if Joe Biden, if they really knew that his health wasn't that great, they should have planned earlier. So I blame them. I blame the whole Democratic Party. And like I say, they hid how sick Joe Biden was. They really did. But anyway, Kamala Harris has a new book out, 107 Days. Go check it out. Let me know how it is. Peace. April Showers, I'm out.